So when I had just gotten out of college, I went to work for a company called Clearview Software, which is now part of Microsoft Consulting. And when I got there, I was asked to program in Visual Basic, even though all of my formal training was in C and C++. And so as I went to work for this new company, which just happened to be owned by my family, I wasn't very productive at first. And their onboarding process at Clearview, which was my brother's company, was to have new programmers or analysts lay out graphical interfaces for customers that we then could code in the background. So within a few hours, using a Visual Basic compiler, you can lay out form fields visually that relate to screens that the customers want. So if you have some programming experience, you have some business experience, you can be an analyst fairly quickly. So most people that have gone to college, in my alma mater, the University of Delaware, when they graduate with an MIS degree, they're capable of going out and meeting with the customer and getting inputs on what they're trying to build. And they have enough business intelligence to build, formulas and get into more complicated subjects as it goes. But in any event, when I went to work for Clearview, my job was to lay out the screens, and then after I laid out the screens, I had to attach form field names to all of them. So without knowing anything about Visual Basic, I could go in and label fields, size them, apply images, and the like. So I was effective, pretty much right away from the time I started. But what happens with Visual Basic is after you sort of laid out the basic fields, you have to build the menu system for Windows, which is essentially your top menu bar. So you go in and you program the top menu bar, where in Visual Basic all of the menu options are coded executables. So when you build an enterprise app in Visual Basic, you go to the main menu, the file menu, and the help menu, and you build executables off the layout. So using Visual Basic and the Microsoft compilers, you essentially laid out for every screen what it looked like, and then you could link it to the toolbar at the top. And not only that, but Visual Basic, without writing any code at all, you can compile every screen as an executable. It just doesn't do anything, but it will present the visual representation of the platform. So Visual Basic, in comparison to something like Xcode, is functional pretty much right away. You lay out the menu system, you lay out your individual screens, and you might have a coding app that does an update function, one that does a view, and you might have some grid database objects that you can lay out pretty quickly. So when I first started in the business, that's what I did. That was my job. And then I learned more and more about my customers over time. But essentially, if I could give them a good screen to look at, a business director or vice president in some place like Bank of America where we were vendors, they could very easily tell us whether that screen was going to work or not. And because I could compile the subscreens, I could also build them a futuristic looking plan for any mods that they wanted in their core business. So when we were doing custom development, we would lay out the screens, we'd lay out the menu, and then we would define all the fields we had and then where they existed in the databases. So if the fields didn't exist, then we had to create them. We had to modify schemas, and we used a tool called Irwin SQL Manager. And Irwin allowed us to go in and, first of all, pull the schema from the database, and then we could add fields to Irwin. So that is a great system, Visual Basic and now Visual Studio. If you just want to build an enterprise app, you can do that within a few hours, have something that's working and something you can present to a customer, so that pretty much all of your time is billable. But when you go to the web, you don't have that many options because customers starting in around 2000 wanted to port all of their Visual Basic apps to the web so that they worked not just on the enterprise, but if somebody went to their house or they had vendor partners or other people, then we could access all those same apps from the road. And then as we started going down that process, then we got into security and networking technologies and load balancers and all the other things that we've come to know as cloud today, including Google, Amazon, and Microsoft clouds. They have all of those things. So we took this simple coding paradigm that worked on Windows desktops, and we moved it out to the web, and we got really complicated really quickly. Not only did we have individual applications that ran differently, we ended up having an individual database server or servers for each application, so that it wasn't a one-to-one relationship anymore. Whereas when we usually built Visual Basic applications for the enterprise, we were talking to one or a few databases that were in the corporation. So you'd have one for the app and one for the ERP system at large. So something like Microsoft Dynamics or Oracle Financials, you might need some data from them to populate, or PeopleSoft. So as we started going to the application market and tried to build applications, if you go to some place like Walmart or Amazon, you see these complicated web structures that are beyond your comprehension of how they could build what they did. And I've been in the business as a webmaster for my own company since 1995. And what we had back in 95 was we were trying to present some products on the web that our customers would then email us or have us come talk to them about. But we weren't really trying to sell anything for real. Companies starting in 2000 and a little bit later, Dell being the first, started building catalogs online, and you could order more and more services, including most of their products, through web tools. And so we spent the better part of the last 20 years making sales possible on the internet. And we all wanted to compete with Facebook and Google and have 1 billion subscribers. But to do that, first we had to really port our enterprise apps to the web. But as we started doing it, it wasn't just one enterprise app anymore. It was one for our vendors, one for our partners. We had associates that were on the road. We were trying to integrate voice and other applications into them, and things got complicated pretty quickly. Now, if you try as a business to compete with Amazon or Walmart, what you end up doing is starting with something simple like WordPress and trying to emulate what they're doing. And of course, WordPress is a great system. It's now powering 70% of the web. But if you're a Community Bank Inc. and you're trying to compete with a Citigroup or a Chase or a Bank of America who has these complicated platforms that do mortgages and analysis and have online tools for banking and the like, they're so complicated that the Community Bank Inc. trying to run that kind of system, they usually try to start with something like WordPress. They bolt on some of their own apps, and somewhere down the road they decide to stop, or they decide to pay Oracle or Microsoft to come in and do everything for them. But they usually aren't very successful. And mom and pop, who are trying to do this on their own, literally have almost no chance. They try to build a sales portal using WooCommerce or Magento or the like, and within a few days they can have a storefront, but it doesn't really have any product materials on it, and the only thing they can really do is resell somebody else's products and link to those technologies. So I was working at Verizon, and I had a customer who wanted me to present a lot of data from the PSTN to them in web format. And of course, Verizon has a lot of tools. They have a system called Impact that sort of is their ITIL inventory and IT monitoring program. They have a lot of third-party systems for every major vendor, obviously, and the like. But we were trying to pull security data from the voice switches, not just on a single platform, but across the enterprise. And as we started doing it, we realized we really didn't have any way to present data from the switch backend to what we were trying to do for a specific customer. So pulling security data and metadata from switches is something that we've been doing in the industry for 20 plus years, so using TL1 and the like. And I came from, before Verizon, CenturyLink, and we had some incredible systems that did that in our NOC, that pulled all the switch records and put those in databases. So I had some experience doing that. But when I went to try to build an application set that would sort of mirror what I had at my ILEC experience, first I tried to buy one. And when I went to the business development teams to try to buy an application or rent one, they pretty much told me no. Unless I was a CLEC and using their systems altogether, the one that I wanted to acquire didn't work. So that was sort of one frame of reference. The other was while I was working as a vendor for Clearview, we built a system that essentially front-ended a back-end, what is now Microsoft Dynamics. We were building applications for consumer credit applications, and we were linking those in the back-end to a commercial accounting system that could print checks and track payments, and do form letters and the like, so that we could market products and get them out there. So we had built this sort of flow through from these custom Visual Basic apps that flowed through to the ERP, and we stopped building back-end ERP systems for every app. We just built the application and then tied them all into a common accounting system. And that allowed us to have one product product catalog, one book, a set of books for that particular customer and the like. And so when I started my new company, Greenville Associates, what I was trying to do was present switch data in the form of location to customers, but not as the only thing. I just wanted to be able to enhance their businesses with location, if nothing else, for security purposes. So knowing where people are logging into your network is very important. And where they're taking their laptops and where the computers are connecting to the network. You can use location not just out on the road and in the world, but also in the enterprise to track IP phones that otherwise would be difficult to deal with. So I started my company to do that, and as I started looking to try to emulate what my previous experience was, I found very quickly that it was nearly impossible. If I started with a tool like WordPress, I could get to a result fairly quickly, but the result, as I started to try to customize it, led me down into PHP programming and trying to deconstruct and decode what all these generations of third-party experts have been doing, so that I could build modular add-ons or plugins that did certain things. So as I started walking through WordPress and Joomla and Drupal, which are the three largest content managers on the internet with more than 85% market share, I found that I couldn't be the best at all three of those systems, but they all added value pretty quickly if you just use them as a basic blog or a sales portal or as an e-commerce system. So if you build little nuggets of goodness in each one of them, you find that you can do that. But to build them back into something like what Bank of America is doing or Chase is doing or Amazon's doing at the corporate level, where they have all these sub-sites that are all linked together, have a common SSO and the like, it's very difficult. And even if you do, you still don't get to the control level that a Visual Basic does. So when you build an application in Microsoft Visual Basic, not only do you build the toolbar and what all the screens look like, but you actually control the size and space, like how many pixels your application is actually going to use. And of course, when we roll that out to 1,000 workstations, we have the ability to essentially, provide some control in the enterprise to what people are doing. And not only that, when I build a Visual Basic app, Visual Studio now comes bundled with its own internal SSO that you can copy. So you can build logins to Microsoft domains within a few minutes if you leave their code alone. But if you want to try to do something special that has references to something like Microsoft Dynamics or to Oracle Financials so that your SSO is tied into a third-party app, you get into really complicated scenarios very quickly. So what I started to do was use my experience as an analyst and try to build a website that would be roughly equivalent to Visual Basic, but that I could roll out fairly quickly. And when I had first started being a webmaster, one of my employees went to a local community college and got training in a system called Adobe Cold Fusion. And what Cold Fusion does is it essentially builds HTML-like query structures into a header that goes above the HTML code, and you can run select and insert statements, not just one, but multiple of them on each and every page. And therefore, you can take standard HTML and with Adobe Cold Fusion, plug in data without using PHP and without leaving the page. So Cold Fusion's 100 times easier to use than PHP, but it's really expensive. It's like on the order of $5,000 to $10,000 per server to roll it out. So if you have a big development shop, it certainly makes sense. But at the small scale, it's very difficult, and especially if you get into shared servers and the like. So I went out to build what is my product, which is called FusionPro. And what FusionPro was intending to do was to rebuild a structure that I had used at Clearview, but now with all web infrastructure. I wanted to do the same things we were doing for customers because I knew they were effective, but I wanted to build those on the web. And I wanted to build them on the web without using Visual Studio, which is now 500 gigs of code. And I wanted them to work everywhere. So not just on Microsoft platforms, but I wanted them to work on Unix and Linux and Mac OS platforms, as well as Windows. So although Windows IIS Server is probably still the best in the world, I have found that as a consultant, especially now with the web, I have to deal with more technology than I ever did when I was getting out of college. So what I did in building FusionPro is I built a framing system that looks like a Visual Basic compiler. It creates a header and a footer, and it compresses the size of the screen based on what your pixel capability is of your desktop. So the first thing that FusionPro does is it figures out what monitor or what mobile application are you using, and then it adjusts the screen size dynamically rather than what we did at Visual Basic with hard coding pixels. FusionPro is dynamic. So I have already sort of improved the world by doing that. The other thing that FusionPro does is it integrates WordPress, Joomla, and Drupal code into a frame, and so I can drag and drop components of multiple instances of all those applications at the same time into FusionPro. And I'm using at this point a Joomla SSO engine that we have heavily modified. Joomla is open source, and so we have taken the source code of Joomla and we've done some things that make the user objects accessible to every code type. And we have built-in page locking so that if I'm using WordPress or Joomla, Drupal, or even .NET code, I can integrate those and page lock across everything that's under my structure. So this is a quantum leap for internet programming, and in fact has exceeded what I did as a business analyst at Clearview, because when I built pages before, they didn't work. They looked like they should work, but nothing worked. You had to build the animation, the grid objects, and the like. And we got better at that because we bought third-party plugins, different database object tools that we integrated at the time, and now come standard with Visual Studio. So like your database objects that you draw on, and you can plug into any .NET database driver. Those kinds of things now work in Visual Studio. Whereas we had to buy separate platforms back when I was coding as a professional engineer, which most of you didn't know I did in a former life. So I have built FusionPro And FusionPro comes bundled with 3 copies of WordPress, one of which is an e-commerce engine running WooCommerce, which is the #1 platform on the web. I have built a WordPress instance for support so that you can create a support forum for your company, and it works good, and it's very coherent, and it is social media login accepted, so you don't have to build logins everywhere. So I started out with those core tools. I added Joomla SSO, and I started building product information in Joomla because it does have group and registered user page level control to some extent. So if you log into Joomla, you can control the look of menus and lock content that's in the CMS, whereas that's much harder to do in WordPress or Drupal without specific programming. And in fact, I've found that their schema is pretty limited, so that it's almost impossible to do without some add-ons like we have built. So I give you in FusionPro the entire landscape of open source software, and it runs on Macs, it runs on Linux, and it runs on Windows. So what I'm doing with FusionPro, if nothing else, if you're a WordPress developer, FusionPro manages the dynamic control of all of your screens. It has setup options, and it does things like mobile device detection that WordPress does on its own, but when you start bolting on 8 or 9 modules, it doesn't do such a great job. And even if you build them separately, linking them all is difficult. So FusionPro by itself is a spectacular technology because I have been able to integrate an equivalent process for what Microsoft is doing, but now I am literally not only building a screen and how it looks, but it works in real time. So within a few minutes, using a GitHub clone process, you can build an instance of FusionPro in less than 30 minutes. And with a little help with your SQL, we have provided the SQL scripts so that you can automate on different platforms all the database creation so that it's all linked up and that your logins are synced. So we're in our 4th generation of code. The 5th generation will have more templates and more configuration dynamically in the front of the process, whereas now we are sort of designed for the heavy-duty, open source developer community. Now, the cool thing about FusionPro is that we have not altered WordPress, Joomla, or Drupal. So any module that they have, or anything you can buy from a third party, which is literally millions of applications, works on our platform. And that is a significant upgrade from using one tool by itself. So I got through this process, and I wanted to see what I could build through open source tools, and I have played pretty much with everything that's in the open domain from Amazon and Microsoft, and most of those are using a few different open source delivery application companies. So these open source developers go to an installer like Softalucious, which is a London-based firm, and they, when you buy specific platforms, you'll see their platform and you can install instances of WordPress that are pre-built and have configuration templates and the like. And so not only does our platform sort of work with all the basics, but we can also add on these other components. So that's all great and well and good, John, but what if you're a Microsoft shop and you're writing .NET code, or you're a SAP shop and you're using their tool set? I had to be able to accommodate any kind of page format. So whether it's PDF or it's a .NET code, we spent considerable amount of time getting our platforms enabled so that I could run Ruby, I could run Node.js, I could run Ionic code, and the other code bases. So FusionPro is a framing system, and to make FusionPro more accessible, we built a framework which we call Strange Brew. And what Strange Brew does is it adds Java frameworks, it adds Cold Fusion, it adds .NET support, and it provides server administration using WebMin and VirtualMin, which are the two largest open source platforms on the Linux community. So we started with a sort of a modest goal to see what was possible, and then we have now sort of encompassed the entire development community so that our platform truly is a world-class engineering solution that is dynamic, has dynamic templates, but I can literally write code in 6 different languages using FusionPro in the same directory structure and still have everything backed up and managed, which was, for me as a senior officer at Bank of America Technology, nearly impossible to do. So what we have done is a quantum leap in DevOps improvement. And so as we started building FusionPro instances and we added Strange Brew, we then started saying, well, I can go out to an Amazon compute image and add this stuff to it by running GitHub installers. But hey, it might be nice to have our own pre-built images. And so we have sort of gone down that road. So I have a separate company that's an managed infrastructure company called Capital Technology, and Capital Technology is focused on building images and deploying them in a hybrid grid world. But that was essentially a second focus. The other thing Capital Technology is focused on, whereas Greenville Associates, my development company, is Capital Technology is focusing on grid technology of deploying databases across the world and managing those tools across a hybrid cloud environment. And that is a very complicated subject in itself. But to sort of go back in time, I've spent the better part of 10 years building FusionPro with version 5 coming out for the new year. And I didn't really make a big to-do about it because it took me an incredible amount of testing to be able to manage the releases of the platform, but I also had to really do a lot of lab work on different types of mobile devices, on different types of monitors, on different types of operating systems. So we've completed that, and we built the original versions of FusionPro. Now, other than the basic modules, I found some tools that I have integrated into what we call Fusion Plus. And Fusion Plus adds things like Lime surveys. It adds Orange HRM platform. So if you don't want to pay for PeopleSoft, we have integrated some applications that essentially can power your enterprise today that are pre-integrated with what we are doing, so that if you don't want to go and purchase a Microsoft system, which we encourage, or an Oracle system, which we encourage and we sell, then we have an open source option that's sort of time and materials based. But we did the heavy lifting in that it all works with FusionPro. So we're calling that Fusion Open when you build the entire system. When you've added Strange Brew, you've added FusionPro, you've added these bolt-on tools, and then you've added Fusion Mobile, which is a fourth module. We are calling that entire platform Fusion Open. It's a fully functional enterprise IT platform, including an associate portal, an SSO fabric, and a mobility solution. It also comes bundled with a variety of different IPPBXs that we can talk about at another day. So it's not just an enterprise system, it is a full-featured voice and video platform that we have enabled. We have also built a video management framework on top of WordPress that we think exceeds YouTube in that you can add more metadata to it, and you can put content both directly into it as well as relate to YouTube content. And so our video management system is sort of a manager of managers, and does have the capability to run native processes through it. So FusionPro is a significant quantum leap in DevOps. I can build entire applications and entire enterprise IT fabrics in less than a day now. I can even skin them I worked at Verizon, I worked at CenturyLink. I can skin those in green, red, or purple within a few hours, and all the tools work with appropriate domains and appropriate logins. So more than 25 years of my own personal experience and integration has sort of been bundled up into what is a GitHub pull. You can find Greenville Associates on GitHub/Greenville Associates, and you can download our code. The current version out there is version 4, and we'll be at version 5 later this year. Right now it's packaged as a developer package that doesn't have WordPress or any of the third-party tools. So to use that, you have to be a system administrator and have several years of experience, or you can buy our intranet or extranet FusionPro instance, and they're all free to download. We're getting several hundred pulls a month, so we have several thousand successful installs at this point, and our goal for the next foreseeable future is to try to monetize that and get into development options that are sort of unique to what Greenville is offering above and beyond the base core system. So at this point, FusionPro is roughly equivalent, believe it or not, to the Visual Studio Compiler and Visual Basic. It's just our code base is all HTML and JavaScript driven. It's PHP ready, obviously, because most of the open source platforms are written in PHP. But if you install FusionPro on a Windows server that already has .NET loaded, FusionPro is much more advanced than what Microsoft is offering. So at some point in the time, I don't know, maybe we'll compete with them, but I'm a poor person and they already own the universe, so we have to deal with them. So that's pretty much it. My value proposition for Greenville to an enterprise company is they literally can't manage their applications today. So they have different file structures, they have different administration platforms, and different database structures for every app. Some of my old customers in the enterprise have tens of thousands of databases of every type every release, and every type of schema supporting them. And in many cases, they'll have multiple databases for enterprise use and many more for the internet for various reasons and security purposes. And so the whole landscape without FusionPro is pretty much almost impossible for a small business to navigate. So we started out with just a DevOps approach. How do we take every code at my former companies and drop it into an identical directory structure? Just doing that in itself makes operations so much easier. And if you can do that, it's a lot easier to automate backups and to eliminate risks in structure. Once you've gotten to that point, imagine you're a company and you've built this front end and now you need to drop stuff into accounting platforms. Well, you have to hire armies of consultants like Clearview, like what we used to do, to try to take your data and make it work in your accounting system of choice. And so what we're doing with FusionPro 5 is we're going to build batch feeds into the various accounting systems from Magento and from WooCommerce, so that any transactions from your front end will automatically flow through. And if we can do that, then essentially you don't need armies of consultants. You just need FusionPro, and there will be some license charges for those pre-integrated apps. But unlike my former roles, like we used to sell Microsoft tools only. So if I went out to a customer and they didn't have Microsoft tools, they would say, well, I already own Oracle Financials. I have a huge investment in our long-term program with the company, so you can't help me. Whereas FusionPro plugs into everything, and we can run on any source code. And so as a result of that, we can sell FusionPro instances to any customer. And we can also upgrade and standardize their application base in FusionPro containers so that we can have a one-size application container and then over time normalize database structures by tying in more consistently to Oracle, Microsoft, and the like. So to the enterprise CTO, I can sell structure and application delivery, not just in his own data centers, but with our managed services company. We can do that anywhere in the world, on Amazon, on Microsoft Cloud, on Google Cloud, or on CTS Cloud, which is our internal base that we're building. So that's pretty much the long and short of what Greenville is doing. Capital is also building a location and proximity platform so that when that comes online sometime next year, we'll be able to provide location-specific marketing tools to our FusionPro customers. So if you're using FusionPro, we'll be able to help you direct market your customers using location data that we're using from our mobile objects. So that gives us a full service end-to-end view. We love Apple, we love Microsoft, we can work with SAP and Oracle, and so our target enterprise customer would not be restricted by working with us. And also we think as we go and deal with the big six accounting firms and the large systems integrators, when they hear our story, we hope will join the bandwagon and help us with some of the automation tasks that they're really good at. So this is me, John Stritzinger. I'm the CEO of the company. I come from an ILAC background. I have more than 30 years with 3 ILACs, and I managed all the other global vendors when I was at Bank of America. So I ran the vendor management team on a global basis. And so I have 30 years of direct ILAC experience, and then the last 10 years or so I have been working on overseas construction projects involving all of the others that I haven't worked for directly. So that's pretty much the highlights. As far as open source platforms go, I have tested our software on all the RHEL and CentOS releases. We're focused on the Debian platform for specific reasons, but I am sort of leaning towards Debian and CentOS as our long-term train. CentOS is an IBM platform, as they have bought Red Hat, and it's a Red Hat variant, and I'm very happy with that. And we are integrating with various versions of cPanel, and we are working on all the clouds. So I've already tested our platform on Amazon, on Google, on CTS Cloud, and previously on Microsoft. So we have a good story to tell. We hope that we'll be the best independent developer in America in a few years. But if we're not, we certainly will have something that will be well received by the CIO of a major company. And I was in a similar role in the past, so I'm pretty sure that for all my previous employers, what we have built is right down the center of the plate. Certainly should be well received. So that is pretty much my summary for those that haven't talked to me in a while. I left Bank of America to go to Verizon, and I left Verizon after another short stint in Ohio doing product development, back to building Greenville, which we started in 2015. So we just made a decision not to raise money or really go to market with a sales strategy until we had our products built. And they're quite complicated products. So although I probably could have launched something quickly with Microsoft Consulting, that wasn't really our target or our plan. Going forward, what our goals are to take FusionPro and integrate it with a location base, and then the location base is the building block for an AI base, and that allows you to process events in AI tools across the infrastructure. And we have also built the Greenville Enterprise Manager, which is a sort of a hybrid grid management tool, which has all the things that I've done in the past: change, inventory, proactive management, and the like. So we have our own telecom inventory system, our own telecom proactive management system. So we could replace all of your existing tools running Oracle or Microsoft, and we are MySQL compliant. So I'm open source, I am private source, I have open database platforms, I have private database platforms, and we in the future will be looking at Google Firebase solutions and some of their MongoDB implementations because they have built-in CDN capabilities. So that's my summary of the corporation. We have just a few private customers right now. I have no debt at all. in the corporation, and all of our stuff is hosted at Google and Amazon. We have a presence in Europe and in the U.S., across North America, and I have 5 Google data centers that I built in, and then we have 2 bricks and mortar locations that I'm pretty proud of. So that is the overview of our company today. We have some new teleworker technology that we've built because we were building new bricks and mortar designs, and because we wanted to make sure that our Strange Brew platform that we will be charging for, because it includes Cold Fusion and Adobe Air and the like, is going to be a license-based solution. It's mostly based on the Cold Fusion pricing right now, but the other tools in it include Visual Studio, .NET, and standard Microsoft offerings. So it's SQL licenses and SQL development licenses for the high-end enterprise that already has a lot of stuff deployed already. So that's how we intend to start going to market. We have some scaling up to do to get to the point where we can put more than 5 consultants out in the field. I have 5 friends and partners that can help us integrate what we're doing, and we're having very good success just with standard downloads with our platform. So that is it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, click on the links. We are out on Twitter and Facebook, and you can email me personally. It's jstritzinger@greenvilleassociates.com, and I would love to talk to you about anything you're doing, or if you just want to save money on hosting. We have a lot of options that we think are valuable. So have a good day. Thanks again. My name is John Stritzinger, and this is a discussion about FusionPro and our lines of business. Thank you.